Hi, I'm Traveling John, and I'm going to travel and sketch. Join me on the adventure. This is a continuation of our adventures in Europe. And these are all the cities that we are going to be visiting. As you remember in the last vlog, we visited Copenhagen. Now we're going to be traveling to Leiden, which is just a half an hour outside the city of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. We just got back from a wonderful trip to Amsterdam, where we saw the artwork of Vincent van Gogh in a gallery there. It was wonderful. And right after that, we came right back to our home base, which is in Leiden. Right now, we were fortunate enough to get housing on a houseboat in Leiden. There are a number of houseboats in the Netherlands, but not quite as many in Leiden. But fortunately, we were able to rent one right on the canal, as you can see. And last night, when we were here, I happened to lounge on the couch. And as I was lounging, the lights were all out, and we had wonderful picture windows. I could watch the boats go by. And there was this large fishing boat, and the skipper was in the back with the motor, and he was escorting a party of about 12 people, 6 on each side, with a nice white tablecloth going down the middle of the boat, candlelight, and each one had their own beverage, enjoying the views and the canals. So it's a wonderful place here in Leiden, and I'm going to show you a little vignette of some pictures I've taken around here, and so that will be next. My wife and I enjoyed some wonderful walks around Leiden. The canals were just beautiful, and they were crisscrossing and going in all different directions through some beautiful neighborhood and architecture. And then the bridges with all their character. Some of them were arched, some of them were straight, some of them lifted up for boats to pass through beneath them. And the small cobblestone streets you could get lost in all different directions. It was just really charming. We liked it a lot. And of course, with that, there were a lot of possibilities for sketches. But I took this one picture, and what I did is I targeted one part of it that I really wanted to make a composition out of and sketch. So that is the part that you see the red outline around. And unfortunately, I don't have a telephoto lens on my camera, so I couldn't get really close to that composition, but still it was workable. So the next thing I did was to zoom in on that with regards to with my Photoshop program, and then in the layer program, I did an ink line sketch or just rough outline of the composition that I wanted to use. And after that, I did a printout of that, and I reduced that down to only about a 5-inch by 5-inch format. And the reason I did that is because this little sketch that you can see, I applied to the bottom of my overhead projector. And that projector put it up on my canvas so that I transfer those lines to the canvas, and that was my foundation for starting the sketch. So now it's time to go into the sketch. This is the ink line on the canvas, and of course it's just to give me a rough idea of proportions and placements. And now I'm going to go into the detail of the sketch. And I'm starting off with the windmill, which is going to be one of my main points of interest, and parts of it where one would think I do just solid black, I do a little rough line there to give it more of that sketchy feeling. And of course, it was aged, so that helps give that aged look. Even though from a distance that looked like a totally solid black, again, I'm giving it a little bit more of a weathered look. And those big ropes coming down from the mast of the sail boats, and boats plural, I'm helping them to stand out by doing the solid black around the ropes so they stand out from the black background. Back and forth with the black just to give the right darkness, but not too much. Wonderful arched roof on this windmill. Gave it such a great different character from a lot of the others. Because this windmill is right next to what they call a Rembrandt bridge, they call this sometimes a Rembrandt windmill. Even though I don't recall any painting or sketch by Rembrandt that included this windmill. And as some of you know, Leiden is the hometown of Rembrandt. So there's a lot of things around Leiden to remind you, including museums of Rembrandt, his home where he was born, and Rembrandt, a lot of the paintings and sketches he did were around here. And from what I understand, I think I said this earlier too, my goodness, if Rembrandt were to come back today, there's a lot of Leiden that he would probably recognize. Including this bridge. I'm working with a real dark line to get the basics in the bridge, and I hope that makes it stand out in the illustration and artwork. That part I'm working on right now is like wood planks placed in such a way as to protect the framework of the bridge from a boat from hitting it. This bridge is not very wide, not wide enough really, or probably not strong enough to support cars, but it is used by bikes and pedestrians. Beautiful park in that area to visit. That's the shoreline on the other side of the bridge. Now I'm going to start darkening in. I want those supports on the bridge to show up, but behind that is this really dark maroon type tree, and that's going to help me give the effect of that bridge standing out. So this big bridge, and you may have seen it in the, this big tree you may have seen in the photograph. I don't know how big that thing is, but it just takes up a grand part of the space. And I'm really not exaggerating when I illustrating that tree in the background. It was huge. Or maybe it was 2 or 3 trees. I don't know. I didn't get up close. Shading in a little bit in the parts I want to stand out or highlight to give it a more 3-dimensional effect. And now I'm going to use a more of a dry ink brush to work on the trees in the background. And actually further back than that grand tree that's so dark. And the boats, I want those to stand out, so I'm giving them a little extra thick line. Sorry I'm moving the canvas all around, but that helps me with regards to doing the line work on this. Lots of curves. I can't use a straight edge on that. I'm going to put some detail in, but I'm not going to get carried away with that. Now I'm using the T-square to draw some nice straight lines for the water. Give it that sort of reflective, moving quality that water has, and a little reflection of the bridge. But I'm going to really, as I go along, emphasize the reflection of that real dark tree in the background. Whenever I do this work, there's a lot of line work, of course, in this water and doing the reflections. And as I worked on it, I thought, man, I have a little bit too much white, even in the water. So I came back with a dry brush later and darkened it up a little bit. So I'm not showing you absolutely everything I do on this sketch. I'm just going through the basics, and then I'll come back. Actually, I put it aside for a while, and I come back and look at it and say, that needs to be a little bit darker, or that needs to be changed a little bit. And so this doesn't go through all the way to the finished art. But then again, when this work is done, I do try to show you the canvas as a finished piece. So that'll be coming up. Now I'm working on the darker reflection of the windmill in the water and the boats. The two rowboats on the left actually were not included in the photograph. I just added those on as a sort of to stop the illustration on the left-hand side, give it a little interest. I believe there was a houseboat with a little dock on the left-hand side, but I didn't want to emphasize that either. So I just left it simple lines. And as I bring that water out more towards the foreground, it has a little more space between the lines, a little more character to the lines. Continuing that reflection out into the foreground, and I'm going to make it a little bit rougher and more grayer as it comes out, and a little bit wider. And of course I'm using the same pen, I'm just using more line work. So that's why it would tend to look more gray. Now those buildings behind the windmill, from the illustration, and it looks like buildings are directly behind the windmills, but in fact there's a whole other canal that's separating the windmill from those buildings. You just don't see it because the boat and other things are in the way. That bridge actually goes across this major canal to the windmill, and then you'd have to go down further to catch another bridge that goes to those buildings on the other side of that portion of a canal. Lots of canals around Leiden, a lot of beautiful canals. These buildings didn't have the profound character of some of the other buildings in Leiden. I really don't know how old they are. I don't think they're as old as some of the other buildings, but they definitely gave it a good break from the tree. Otherwise the tree would come right down into the windmill area. So I like that they were there. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So now I'm just working on a little of the detail of that smaller structure under the windmill that's actually the major support of the mill above, or the mechanism above that runs the windmill. Just keeping the roof as a gray, just a light gray, by using lines. have sort of a rough shrub. And now actually I'm going to put a little bit more detail on this shrub that's just in front of the rough one that is on the other side of the boats. Giving it more of a leafy definition. And that'll be about it. As I mentioned in the work that I was doing on the sketch, that I tend to look again and again at the sketch that I've done on the canvas, and I say, oh my goodness, I should include this, or I should include that, or I need to make that a little darker, or something of that nature. So again, this final sketch on the canvas is a bit different than what you saw me working on, only because I've done some additions to it. And I've darkened up the water, at least in the reflective area of the tree, and also the windmill. I've added a little shading for a part of the windmill that I didn't have in there before. And I added a little shading on the boats themselves because they were a little bit too light. So that's the kind of thing that I look back at and make changes. I'm quite content and happy with the way it's turned out now. Now, with regards to this inkline sketch, if you would like to obtain the original, I would encourage you to first of all go to my website, which is TravelnSketch.com, and there's two buttons there. One, of course, is to refer friends of yours to my vlogs on YouTube, and the other button is to go to my store, which is on Etsy, and you'll be able to invest in both the original and high-end archival prints of this black and white sketch, or inkline sketch. So thanks again for joining me on this Travel and Sketch adventure to Leiden, and I hope you join me on the next one, where I'll be sharing more pictures and adventures of our time there in Leiden, and then of course I'll be doing the color application to this ink line. So take care and have a great day.